Welcome, everybody. How's Oklahoma doing today? Great. Welcome to the Capitol. It is wet today. And this is the last day for Carly Atkinson, my comms director. So really excited, and she has done a fantastic job, and we're going to miss you in the state of Oklahoma. And she's spreading her wings and going to be moving on, and it's going to be exciting to watch her career. So native Virginian that came and it's been in Oklahoma for a couple years now. So we're excited. She's done a great job. So anyway, we'll open it up to questions for our Friday annual press availability.
I'll ask tax cuts seem like they're increasingly unlikely. We're heading into, last week of session. So I want you, can you respond to that? Also, what about some criticism that maybe we should have prioritized tax cuts rather than tax credits for private and homeschool parents?
Well, first off, tax cuts, I haven't given up hope, and I will always, for Oklahoma, advocate for it. So my state of the state last year, the state of the state this year, I've called for smaller government, lower taxes. And again, I would never put Oklahoma in a harmful situation and cut revenue below reoccurring expenses, but you also cannot just grow government unchecked. And that's kind of what tax cuts do. When we have a budget surplus and we have the largest savings account in state history, it is very reasonable to give some of that back to the taxpayer, especially in the form of grocery tax, or with inflation hurting everyone and everything seeming to cost more and our dollars not go as far as they used to. So we certainly really excited about the education package we put together, but we still have room to do a 1/4 point tax cut. And again, implore the legislature to do what's right, and let's give some of that back to the taxpayer.
The House took a step this week to potentially renew some tribal compacts on tobacco, motor fuels, and vehicle registrations. They wanted to renew them as is for 5 years. Senate Pro Tem Greg Treat said yesterday he might be open to renewing them as is for 1 year. Seems like they're trying to cut you out there. What do you think?
Yeah, you'd have to ask them why they're doing that, because it's always been understood that the governor negotiates the compacts and then the joint committee gives a thumbs up or thumbs down. So again, what's really disappointing is somebody put language in here in a JCAB in the dark of the night, the very last week of session. This has never been talked about this whole entire session. The governor had no idea about it. So think about that, Oklahoma. The governor had no idea about something. Somebody comes in and drops language and says, oh yeah, we're going to extend something for 5 years without the governor knowing about it, just to try to outlast me to the next administration. So really, really disappointing. Again, I'm not against anybody opening a gas station and selling tobacco. We just want it to be fair. And when we're wiring, 2 of the tribes, the Chickasaws and the Choctaws, get $17 million annually wired to them from the state. So they operate some of the largest casinos in the country, billions of dollars in income and revenue, and flying around in private jets. And I take it very seriously when we're wiring money to an entity like that. That's taxpayer dollars that we want to make sure that we're very prudent with. And I want to make sure I understand that compact and make sure it's fair for Oklahoma. That's the way I always am going to operate, thinking about the taxpayer and thinking about what's best for 4 million Oklahomans.
Specific wiring money, what is the company? Help familiarize me with the mechanism.
Well, on tobacco compacts, for example, we collect tax at the wholesale level. So when you deliver a carton of cigarettes to Quick Trip or On Q or Love's or to a tribal gas station, the tax is already collected. And so the compact, then we wire 50% of that tax back to the tribe. And so the 2 that I just talked about that are trying to get a 5-year extension, I know they got 17 million wired to them last year in that reimbursement of taxes. And again, you really don't even need a compact. The federal law says that an Indian can buy tobacco from their tribe on their tribal land tax-free. So they can already do that. That's fine, no problem. We have no argument with that. So I don't know exactly why we have a compact that we're wiring 17 million to these very, very large businesses.
So what do you want to see from these
Well, I actually renewed, so there's a couple things. I know we're getting into the weeds, but I renewed and offered a 1-year extension to those 2 tribes that we mentioned at the same 50-50 split. But the big deal was, because I want to make sure everybody knows, I'm not against renewing the compact, but the language has to change, because post-McGirt, what happens is the language in the compacts that they're trying to renew would expand from just trust land only to all of eastern Oklahoma. So that means they don't have to put their gas station in trust anymore. It would already be subject to this compact. That's the problematic piece of this. Then you can just open up right across the street from Quick Trip or OnQ, and then the state is wiring more and more revenue away from our schools and our roads and our bridges. Again, I want everybody to be successful, but I want everybody to play by the same set of rules. That's what I've always said. I'm for fairness, and again, if I see something that's not fair, I'm going to call it out.
Governor, the AG has said he will not, for a short period of time, while the ACLU seeks an injunction for SB 613, the gender-affirming gender transition year law, he'll not enforce that law until that legal process is at least reached that point. What do you make of this?
So let me be very clear. Senate Bill 613 was passed. I signed it. I will not allow transgender surgeries to happen to minors in the state of Oklahoma. I just think we have an obligation, a duty to protect young people. And so super disappointed and confused on why we would agree. And maybe there's a legal argument why the AG had to do that. I can't understand it, because that's agreeing to our worst day in court. And that's the problem with that. So the legislature absolutely has the right to pass this law. I have the right to sign that law, and we have the right to protect kids. We knew we were going to get sued. We knew ACLU is going to sue on anything that is about traditional family values or freedoms or anything that we're for, they're against. So we knew we'd get sued on that, and to agree with that lawsuit to put a stay on that is super disappointing.
So what happens here now? I mean, do you plan to take legal action of your own, or can you compel the AG not to do this, or what happens?
You know, I mean, with the AG agreeing with basically the prosecution or the people that brought that lawsuit, the ACLU, to agree to this stay, I'm not sure exactly what can happen at this point. But again, I want to be very clear to Oklahomans. I believe we have a duty and an obligation to protect kids from mutilation, from surgery, some permanent altering surgeries as a minor. And again, I always followed up with this comment. I'm not against any one person, and if you're an adult and you want to have an elective surgery, you can go do that. I'm not going to use taxpayer dollars to do it, but you can go do that. But under 18, we don't allow them to buy alcohol, cigarettes, get tattoos. There's things we have to protect young people because their minds aren't fully developed yet. I do not believe this is healthcare, and we need to wait until someone is an adult before they make these life-altering decisions. That's common sense. I know Oklahomans are with me and really perplexed on why we're agreeing that that's not a valid law.
Governor, at the beginning of the year, you called for less DEI officers at universities, and then yesterday we saw a couple lawmakers file a resolution basically calling for the defunding of DEI programs at our higher learning institutions. Is that something that you would support, the stipulation when it comes to funding for higher learning to defund their DEI programs?
100%. Listen, let's teach kids. Let's get more engineers and nurses and doctors and lawyers and school teachers. I think it's nonsense. Why are we spending taxpayer dollars on this stuff? We already have anti-discrimination laws on the books. I think our universities do a great job, but you don't need to highlight that. You don't need to promote and talk about that somebody is an inherent racist just because of the color of their skin, or somebody's oppressed because of the color of their skin. We're not going to spend taxpayer dollars on that. It's higher education, it's higher learning. Let's start working with industry. Let's start getting those young people ready for the workforce. And I think that's contrary to the mission that we're trying to do in higher education right now.
But in a couple of years, when you were heading into office, when you just started your campaign a couple years before that, the University of Oklahoma specifically had several high-profile events of chant using a racial slur on a bus at a fraternity, a couple of instances of people wearing blackface on campus, some social media videos, again, using similar racial slurs and other matters. Didn't the university study this issue and try to figure out, like, how do we require some more thoughtful behavior from those 18-year-olds who are entering campus whose brains, as you just said, are not fully developed, right? Like, didn't they sit down and think, how do we address this so that we don't have Oklahoma continuing to have racist chants be broadcast all over national news?
Oh, I'm sure they have. I'm sure they put study groups together, and the fraternity you're talking about, I think, has been kicked off campus, and you're going to have idiots out there. You're going to have people do stupid stuff, but putting a study group together and hiring 50 DEI officers is not going to, in my opinion, that's using taxpayer dollars to try to educate forever, to your words, 18-year-olds coming into a university.
But it's a university, like, it's a public university. They use taxpayer dollars to educate students.
I'm just going to disagree with the fact that we need to push a DEI doctrine, before, in the music department. And so I've seen some of that stuff happening where they're asking them to teach these type of classes in the music department, for example. Again, when you have 50 DEI officers and 5 career placement officers, I think that's getting out of whack. And again, we already have laws that are anti-discriminatory, and again, you're going to have things that are going to happen. We're going to punish those bad actors, and we're going to move on. But OU, as a general rule, I think they're doing a great job. So I don't see spending more taxpayer dollars on this type of faculty.
Governor, you have.
Yes, sir.
Can we go back to tribes briefly? At the beginning of this term, you mentioned wanting to start anew with tribal leaders. How would you say that relationship is now? I mean, has there been any conversations since, as far as, I don't know, building bridges?
Yeah, I mean, well, I invited all of the tribes, called all of them, and when you say tribes, you're talking about the governments of the tribes, not the people, because I'm actually a member of the Cherokee, so the tribal leaders.
Yes.
Okay, so I called all the tribal leaders, invited them to the inauguration, and wanted to reset after they spent a lot of money against me in the campaign, trying to take me out and running negative ads. So really tried to reset. My attorney, general counsel was in conversations with a couple of the tribes. They agreed that we would talk after session, and then all of a sudden this legislation was filed, and it's pushed by them, of course, to file this JCAB bill at the end of session to extend for 5 years. So a goodwill goes both directions, and so again, we would like that to go both directions. Again, I stand for what's best for all 4 million Oklahomans, and if they're successful, that's great. But I always want Oklahoma to be successful.
Governor, you have House Bill, I think it's 1236 on your desk. It weakens some of the free speech protections in the Citizens Protection Act. I think it makes some changes on whether or not attorney's fees shall be awarded or may be awarded by the judgment. Have you made any decisions on that bill itself, or thought about that issue itself?
Yeah, I saw, the Press Association just got that reviewed a little bit by my team, but the Press Association is asking me to veto that. There's several calls that are telling me that that's problematic for a lot of different reasons. But again, that's another bill that I'll review later on today. I've just very quickly read some of the information about it, so we're still making a decision on that.
Governor, you signed Wednesday or Thursday those Reform Act bills that relate to Project Sirius and Enel. I'm just wondering, since you signed that, does that make that a done deal? Have you talked to the company since you signed the bills? They assured you they're coming, or what happens next?
Yeah, so the CEO of Enel called me, and he was really excited to come to Oklahoma. It's my understanding they've already filed their permit with the DEQ. They have to, kind of get some last-minute board approval, but we're hoping that they will make an announcement publicly next week. Really, really excited about them. That's going to be the largest economic development in state history. It is over $1 billion worth of investments, over 1,500 jobs. When you put both of those together, that's the largest in state history, and the fact that it's in rural Oklahoma, I'm very, very excited about. To put it in comparison, Google, when they built their facility, they spent about $1.3 billion, but they only had 500 jobs initially. And then you've got some folks with a few more jobs, but they didn't have the big investment. So when you combine those two together, it's the largest in state history. And we're still really optimistic that we're going to land, I think we call it Project Ocean right now. So we think we'll land Project Ocean, which will even surpass this as the largest economic development in state history. And this is a 5 million square feet building, $5 billion investment, and 3,500 direct jobs. And remember, what's important for Oklahomans is when you have direct jobs of 1,500 in Annelle's case, the ancillary jobs and the supply chain that comes around there, and the roofers and the electricians and the plumbers and the landscapers and the delivery workers and the restaurants. And I mean, when you think about the indirect jobs and the ripple effect, the new construction, the homes, all that stuff, it's just amazing to think about. So my job is just to be the businessman governor and get our economy going. And I'm just really, really excited about these two projects, getting across the finish line.
Governor, the legislature is going to run its budget bills through the special session process. I've been told that you're on board with that, you're seemingly okay with that, but it does take your line item veto authority and your veto authority away because they can come back and override. It doesn't take it away, but it negates some of that political power. What are you doing in the meantime, if you are doing anything, to ensure that your priorities are heard and that your political authority is still in this budget process?
You know, most of session, the education package took a lot of the air, and so we just got that agreement on Monday. So now the budget process can actually finally take place. Yes, they're doing a special session, and they do that to give themselves time, to your point, which is, you know, Oklahomans don't really care about how the sausage is made, but they want to make sure that they have the time to come back in case I veto something. And that's just the way the building works. If they would have got on the budget earlier, they would have had it to my desk today, and that would have given them time before next Friday to come back in. So that's just kind of how the building works. That's no big deal. Again, I don't really have any priorities except lower taxes, smaller government. So if we had a flat budget, I'd be happy with that. The tax credit, the school choice options was very, very important to me. Getting that across the finish line, I think, is historic for Oklahomans. I think 20 years from now, we're going to look back on this budget for parents' choice, and we're going to say, hey, this was really, really good for a lot of parents across the state of Oklahoma. It injected some more competition in our school system. So excited about that. The budget, my team is now working with them. Secretary Laws and Secretary Bingman are working together with them to try to get a good budget now across the finish line. I'm still hoping for a 1/4 point tax cuts. We can absolutely afford that, and we'll see if we get that in there. That's certainly in my budget. It was in my original budget when I rolled it out at the State of the State.
Governor, you had a call earlier this week with Mitch Landrieu at the White House. I think he's a quick person for infrastructure. Can you give some details on that call?
Yeah, so I talked to Mitch Landrieu at the White House. I'm on the executive committee of the NGA and the RGA, and so myself, Governor Cox, Governor John Bel Edwards of Louisiana, just 3 or 4 others of us are really pushing for permitting reform. And I think it's a bipartisan effort that I think the president is on board with. We have to, because his Inflation Reduction Act and some of his investment projects, he has to have permitting reform get done. And I'll give you a couple examples. There's a transmission connection, New Mexico, Kansas, and the panhandle of Texas and Oklahoma that would connect cleaner, more affordable power to 4 different grids, including our Southwest Power Pool. But you can't let those projects take 10 years to accomplish. I talked to the CEO of Phillips just recently, and they've got a California existing pipeline that they want to retrofit to carbon capture, which is really what some of the California environmentalists want. And it's going to take 10 years to get an existing pipeline permitted for a retrofit for carbon capture. So those type of things, we need to have an honest conversation about that. Oil and gas has to be included in that. Oil and gas has to be included with infrastructure for transmission lines and also clean power as well. And that's all we're saying. And so really with Mitch Landrieu, he's senior advisor to the president and in charge of kind of rolling out that infrastructure plan. He's the former mayor of New Orleans. And anyway, great conversation with him. And also John Podesto, we had a conversation with him on the same topic about a month before.
How many compacts are you currently negotiating? I know you mentioned 2, but there's a lot, right?
Well, those 2, there's only 2 that are up this year by December 31st, so that's why we wanted to do a 12-month extension on that. But the main point was making sure that we understood the language. So the language is super important, that it doesn't expand to include redefining Indian country to being basically, 50% of our state. We wanted it to continue to be what we've all understood. It's only on trust land. Again, we're just trying to make sure we're thinking about what's best for the future of Oklahoma.
You mentioned that tribal leaders spent some money and effort to endorse your opponent, defeat you in the election last year. You said you're a citizen of the Cherokee Nation. Principal Chief Hoskin is up for re-election here in a couple of weeks, and I just didn't know whether you were involved in the or supporting anybody in the Cherokee Nation.
Well, here's the deal. I'll be supporting whoever's for, lower taxes, smaller government, working with the state of Oklahoma to benefit all 4 million Oklahomans. Chuck Hoskins, he's the one that said he didn't want to fly the Oklahoma flag. You probably remember that last year, and then quickly reversed when he got some outcry and push from them. But if you read the Cherokee Constitution, it's really problematic and it's different than the state of Oklahoma. So yeah, I'm not going to be endorsing him. He stood up and endorsed my opponent, and so we'll see. I think there's 3 people running right now, and Wes No Fire is a great Oklahoman from Tahlequah. I think he's from Tahlequah, Oklahoma, and then the other person I think is Kara. I've met both of them, but Wes No Fire is a good guy.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody.